Based on the Diego calculations, assuming they turn out to be even close to accurate, the most unsafe places to live over the next 3 years will be the United States and the UK, followed by Germany and then the rest of the EU nations. This population forecast was controversial, showing population reductions of 80% in the United States and between 50 and 80% for almost every Western European country. That the study mysteriously disappeared from Diego's website post COVID in March 2021. Until the impact of the COVID pandemic and resulting mass vaccination campaign, many researchers were scratching their heads as they reviewed the Diego spreadsheets. But now it's beginning to make sense. Researcher Craig Researcher Craig Parder Cooper recently released his report on predictions of global depopulation based on an updating of the Diego numbers. You can see his updated predictions for every country. He shows the US losing 70.2% of its population and the UK losing 78.5%. And I want to open this report just to show you guys the kind of things that, or the kind of forecasts that are developed by these organizations, man. It was pretty scary coming to see something like this. And the fact that this is something that could possibly become true by 2025. So this is an actual list or a forecast of what I'm guessing what the population was back then in 2019 and what the population is forecasted to be by 2025 with a percentage change and the deduction of populations. And it's just this massive list of almost all the countries in the world. You know, wherever you're from, you'll probably find your country there. There's even South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini, countries that, you know, regions of the world where I come from. And funny enough, there are countries here that are forecasted to have zero population change. And then there are countries that actually are forecasted to have negative population changes, like Algeria or Malaysia or Myanmar. And it's like if you're gonna have a negative change in population reduction, obviously that means a population growth. But then here's my question: does that growth come from birth, like increase in birth, or does it come from mass migration? Look at that. Eswatini is projected to have 27% increase in population. It's a scary thing that something like this even exists. I haven't had the chance to correlate the forecasted populations with what they are today. That's a good idea to go from here, but I guess I could plan that and then get back to you guys. Yeah, so the top seven countries that are clustered near the top of the list with the highest population reductions: the UK, the USA, Germany, France, Italy, Canada, and Japan. Pretty much the exact same thing that the article was talking about in terms of the most dangerous countries to be by 2025. And I I don't know, man. I don't know. I'll get back to you by 2025, see how realistic these numbers were. But back to the article though. So Diego's predictions seemed so far fetched in 2014 that some folks accused him of engaging in a psyop, but maybe he had good sources to back up its analysis. The Rockefeller Foundation had published its lockstep analysis in 2010, all but guaranteeing that major pandemics would wipe out tens of millions of people. And Bill Gates, the world's richest man, was well into his vaccine phase by 2014, as well as having shifted his focus a few years earlier away from computers and into more profitable vaccines. All right, so the article goes on for like two more paragraphs, stuff that isn't really that impactful in terms of in terms of information. But this was just a segue that I wanted to start off this discussion with in terms of the coming mass depopulation. Now, here we see depopulation coming from many angles. We saw war, we saw desterilization, we saw natural disasters, we saw disease, um, and we also saw famine. So, out of all those branches, I just want to like get us to dive deeper a bit into famine. So, I have here another similar article about the depopulation agenda, and it just dives deeper into the depopulation agenda from a famine and food shortage perspective. Globalists revving up plans to engineer global famine and starvation. 13 nations agree to convert over to less productive green farming methods. So, the global climate cult is getting ready to kick its war on food into overdrive with 13 nations, many of them major cattle and food producing states, led by the United States, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Spain, signing onto a commitment to place farmers under new restrictions intended to reduce emissions of methane gas. The Global Methane Hub announced in a May 17 press release that our agriculture and environmental ministers and ambassadors from 13 countries, including the United States, have signed a commitment that pledges to reduce methane emissions in agriculture. The US was represented by Biden's climate czar, John Kerry. All right, so what does this mean? And why should you care? We'll break it down. According to the press release issued by these nations and posted at the Global Methane Hub, last month, the Global Methane Hub collaborated with the ministries of agriculture of Chile and Spain to convene the first ever global ministerial on agricultural practices to reduce methane emissions. The ministerial brought together high ranking government members to share global perspectives on methane reduction and low emission food systems. The gathering led to a statement in which the nations committed to support efforts to improve the quality and quantity of and access to finance for climate change, adaptation, and mitigation measures in the agriculture and food sectors, and to collaborate on efforts aimed at lowering methane emissions in agriculture and food systems. In other words, they're going to use the aim of lowering methane emissions as a means to food shortage or just less supply of food. Conference participants included the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Climate and Clean Air Coalition, Inter American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, the World Bank, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the Inter American Development Bank. The World Bank, another creation of the post World War II US led liberal rules based order, has been talking a lot lately, along with the UN, about a coming famine. The World Bank issued a white paper just last week, on May 22, titled Food Security Update: World Bank Response to Rising Food Insecurity. I'm gonna open that. I haven't seen that yet. Invitations, that. I gotta look at this. It's gonna take a minute, but I gotta look at this. Anyway, I'll check it out. All right, so the director of the United Nations World Food Program has also been putting out, starting in September of last year, dire warnings about a coming global famine. So it's curious to me that the very time the globalists are warning about food shortages and famine, their mouthpieces at the World Bank, the UN, and within the administrations of the US and its allies. Notice China and Russia are nowhere to be found in these preposterous anti food policies, are talking about converting over to a new and unproven form of sustainable farming that's focused more on reducing methane than it's on producing the highest yields of food. Modern food production is bad, they tell us, because it produces methane, which supposedly harms the environment. So, in order to protect the environment, we should produce methane, which means we should produce less food so that more of us die. Okay. Food systems are responsible for 60% of methane emissions, said Marcelo Mena, CEO of Global Methane Hub. When they throw numbers and percentages at you like that are supposedly gathered from research, experimentation, data gathering, and they throw numbers at you like that, you need to ask yourself: one, what organization is presenting these numbers? Two, what are their agendas? Three, uh, which should actually be number one, who is funding this research? Because whoever funds this research, the results will be attuned, or would the results would always lean more on their agenda. So is it possible that 60% of food systems are responsible for 60% of methane emissions? Perhaps, but I'm also saying that you do the research and you go check it out yourself. So, Marcelo Mina continued to say that we congratulate countries willing to take the lead in food systems methane mitigation and confirm our commitment to support this type of initiative with programs that explore promising methane mitigation technologies and the underpinning research of methane mitigation mechanisms to create new technologies. John Kerry is also excited about taking valuable productive farmland offline, reducing the size of cattle herds, and turning our food production systems over to technocrats and globalists offering vague promises of new technologies. All right, so let's break this down a little bit. Reducing the size of cattle herds. Now, I don't know. I don't know if they know this or not. Um, but when they say stuff like this, reducing the size of cattle herds, reducing emissions by these cattle, it's I do not see a way to reduce that without reducing the food supply, in turn resulting in food shortage, um and turning our food production systems over to technocrats, man. That's giving up the food production systems to these faceless organizations, these faceless families and institutes who have no connection with the mass majority of people. You want to give your source of food production to them. That's that's a plan bound to fail. But of course they know that already. According to the US Environmental Protection Agency, the US is busy trying to mitigate methane emissions not just in America but worldwide. The United States provides key leadership, funding, and technical expertise for international methane emission reduction efforts, resulting in more than 1,140 methane mitigation projects through GMI as of 2021. So I'm guessing here this is the map of the projects worldwide which are taking place in this agenda. In just one example, the Biden administration plans to spend 1.5 million in taxpayer funds on a program aimed at empowering female climate change activists in the patriarchal society of northern Kenya. Oh, there's a lot to break down in this one. First of all, I find it hilarious that the Biden administration, or like just any government in general, spending $1.5 million of taxpayer money, of your money, to find and research ways to kill you. that's like that's like how twisted can you get, man? That's messed up. Um, yeah. So Um, Empowering female climate change activists in the patriarchal society of northern Kenya. And look how they highlighted patriarchal. It's what these governments like to do is that they like to break down the family unit. They like to break down the bond of the household. And for those of you who don't know, in order to build a productive society, a growing society, a moralistic society, it starts off with the family unit, a building block, uh, the classic the classic family, a father, a mother, and a child or children. And in that comes the need and the natural desire to want to see your household flourish, to want to see your 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 family flourish. You want to see your children flourish. You want safe communities for your children. You want role models for your children. You want your children to grow up in a safe and conducive environment. And out of the household, that goes to the neighborhood. You want the same for your neighborhood. And everybody in the neighborhood wants the same thing. And then a step further from the neighborhood is the community. You want your community to grow, and everybody in it, because they have families to take care of, because they have people that they're responsible for, they want to see um, morals. They want to see principles. To they want to they want to see their society strive, and grow. And out of the community, you want to build a thriving city. Out of take a step further than that. After a striving city, you want to build a striving region or district. You know, After that, you get a couple of districts together. A step further than that, you want to build a better nation, and that all comes down. In order to build a great nation, it all falls back down to the family unit. You know, um, Looking at your loved ones, having a responsibility over them, having the responsibility to set the proper foundations for them to grow and for them to strive in society. And so with programs such as empowering female climate change activists, what that does is it gives the women of that region of northern Kenya the confidence and the belief that they can counter or they can challenge the men of their villages or the men of their communities. When in fact, men are the natural leaders of society. They are the lawmakers, they are the builders of the judicial systems, they are the architects, they build homes, they build roads, they build cities, you know? And that just falls back to biblical law. First it's the Most High, then after that it's His Son, Yahweh. And then after that is it's the man, and then after that it is the woman, then after that it is the child. So when you have women being convinced that they could challenge men, they no longer want to believe in their authority. They no longer want to respect their authority. Um, and they no longer believe that they should fall under a man's they no longer believe that they should fall under a man's advice. And that right there sets the family unit back. When you have men and women opposing each other like the way they do in today's times, not just Kenya, not just Africa, but here in the States as well, it holds back the family unit. The number of families are are being wiped away. The dwindling. You have so many single parent families. You have single mother families. Um, and it's this break between the family unit, between the man and the woman. That's causing some of the things in our society. That's causing high abortion rates. Abortion rates are at Abortion rates are at the highest that they've ever been, ever in the history of mankind, especially in the black community. You can go look this up yourself. There is no other group of women who abort as many babies as black women do. Um, and if I'm correct, I really don't want to lie to you guys. If I'm correct, um, women in the black community abort about 500,000 babies a year. I'm gonna have to look that up. Um, but given that is true, imagine that. That's an army a year, bro. Like that. Those are numbers that you could use to build a nation, to build cities, to build our own economies. Um, it's that kind of breaking down of the family unit. Not only contributes to abortion rates, it contributes to the number of black teenage males ending up in prison, or even worse, Lord forbid, dead on the street. Um, it is that kind of breakdown that's contributing to the amount of men being imprisoned, and it is that kind of breakdown in our communities that's keeping us from seeing the need to come together as a collective in order to build shops, in order to build stores, in order to develop confidence within ourselves and within the next man and within our neighbors, to circulate currency between ourselves, as opposed to spending our money in corporate grocery stores. You know, so a lot of the problems that are going on in society today are, well, it stems from the lack of, or it stems from the lack of investment between the family unit. But anyways, man, before I digress any further, John Kerry said in a statement, mitigating methane is the fastest way to reduce warming in the short term. Food and agriculture can contribute to a low methane future by improving farmer productivity and resilience. We welcome agriculture ministers participating in the implementation of the global methane pledge. The May 17 press release further states that the focus of the conference was the deployment of science based practices, innovation, and technologies in line with sustainable food production. The nations signing on to this pledge to transform their policies are the United States, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Burkina Faso, Chile, Czech Republic, Ecuador, Germany, Panama, Peru, and Spain. The government of Spain will organize a second conference in 2024 to monitor and advance implementation efforts related to the statement and encourage more countries to join, according to the May 14 press release. In order to save the planet from emissions that come from cow farts, they claim it's necessary to force farmers to change the way they farm, converting their land and livestock to more innovative methods and science based practices. These methods will need to be These methods will need to be implanted not just on farms, but throughout the food systems. They never come out and say what these innovative changes are, only that they will be based on new technologies and science based. We can presume from this language that among the practices being considered are replacing a major portion of the beef and dairy cattle, pork, and chicken stocks that populations rely on for protein with insect larvae, mealworms, crickets, etc. The UN, World Economic Forum, and other NGOs have been promoting meatless diets and the consumption of insect protein for years. And who knows, man? You probably already eat insect proteins, bro. Like, you really think that garbage from McDonald's and Burger King is real meat? I mean, I know it's not. Um, those chicken nuggets and what have you, probably insect larvae. Who knows, man? Out here eating crickets and worms and all kinds of bugs and stuff. Look at this. Billionaires have invested in massive insect factories being built in the state of Illinois. You see, people, come on, bro, man. These people are playing with us, bro. That is, I know they do not care about the mass, the masses enough to build a factory just to feed them. No, they're feeding you. They want to feed you insects because they're toying with you. They want to feed you insects because they are mocking you and that they are laughing at you. So in these factories, where mealworms, crickets, and other bugs will be processed as additives to be inserted into the food supply, often without clear labels that will inform people of exactly what they're eating. Bill Gates is also partnering with other billionaires to invest in the production of lab grown meat. A process that involves, man, what doesn't Bill Gates have his money invested in? So this is a process that includes using cancer cells from cows, chickens, and pigs to quickly grow artificial meat. Look at that, man. They're using the sickened livestock, cancer cells from animals, man, and they're using that to grow meat, which you'll eat in turn, most likely giving you cancer or any other illnesses within the body, such as acidity. You know, um, the body has a pH balance, and it's best to eat alkaline foods in order to keep your health and immune system stable. Because it's when you eat acidic foods that you start developing mucus inside of your body, and in turn, that mucus becomes a nesting ground for bacteria and viruses, which in turn cause illnesses. And I have some work to do on this journey as well, man. I eat a lot of beef. I eat a lot of chicken. I don't eat pork. I don't eat swine. You guys have to stay away from that. Swine is very unclean meat. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know pigs do not sweat. They do not detoxify their flesh. Um, and you are what you eat, man. So when you ingest pork, you're ingesting all of that dirt and toxins into your body. And the scriptures simply say in the book of Deuteronomy, "Do not eat the swine, for it despises you." And that is exactly what the Most High meant. Farmers will be increasingly forced off their land, and is already happening in the Netherlands, which is the world's leading net exporter of food after the United States. Couldn't have said it better myself. Farmers are being forced off their land. A lot of billionaires and millionaires, a part of this organization, um, a part of the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates' friends, they're buying a lot of farmland just to gain that much more control of the food supply. All this will add up to a coming famine, the likes of which has never been witnessed by the current generation of people on Earth. It's all by design. Globalists like Dennis Meadows, the author of the 1972 Club of Rome endorsed book, The Limits of Growth, informed us of the globalists' plans to drastically depopulate the Earth. His comments in the video below were made in 2017. Okay, so below the video, the article goes on to say that the writer has also reported extensively on the Diego forecast, which forecasted a nearly 70% reduction in the population of America by 2025, with similarly drastic population declines for the UK, Germany, Canada, Australia, and other NATO aligned countries. We went over this in the earlier video. There is no more efficient way to depopulate than through war, famine, and plagues. Keep that in mind. Isn't it interesting that all three of these time tested methods of murder are in play right now? The war on food is very similar to what's going on in the energy sector, where governments are colluding with big businesses to transform all transportation from gas powered to electric powered, meaning far fewer people will be able to afford electric cars And even if they can afford them, the use of those cars will be much more tightly monitored and controlled due to the need for charging stations that rely on an already overtaxed power grid. If you can't charge your car up when you want to, only when you are allowed to, you have now turned over your freedom of movement to the regulators of those charging stations. In the food industry, big agriculture will also collude with the governments of the world to produce much less beef, chicken, and pork, replacing that protein with insects and lab grown fake meat, the health effects of which are largely unknown. Damn, man, yeah, I can't even imagine eating insects. Funny enough, the scriptures say that it's okay to eat crickets or grasshoppers, but that's about the only things that crawl, which you can eat. All that other stuff, like, nah, you don't want to be eating insects, man. Even the crustaceans, the aquatic insects, the crab, the lobsters, the shrimp. Those are just the insects of the ocean. You should stay away from that as well. Those are bad creatures to be eating. They eat gunk. They eat slime. They eat you know, oceanic waste. So you don't want to be ingesting that into yourself. These changes have already been on full display in the Netherlands, where the government has generated intense controversy by launching a plan to reduce livestock herds by up to 50% and reduce the use of nitrogen fertilizers by 30%. No matter how much they talk about innovation and new technologies, you can't reduce your herds and reduce your use of fertilizer and then claim that your farms will be more productive. That's a lie. All of their innovations will translate directly into less food tables throughout the world. Prepare now for famine. Stocking your pantry up in a short term easy fix. We also need to be thinking long term. If you've never grown a garden or raised chickens, that's something you might want to think about in terms of increasing your skills. Maybe you've grown a garden for several years and have some experience, and you can share that with a neighbor who has raised chickens but has little or no garden experience. Networking and cooperating with the people around us will be the key to survival once this global famine intensifies. It may be that the actual famine never arrives in the wealthiest countries like America. Food may continue to be on the shelves, but I guarantee that the prices will continue to go up. I agree. Substantially on staple items like flour, bread, eggs, meat, and dairy. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it for this article and for this installation of Il Spectrum, man. I want to thank you guys for listening to the video, and always remember to practice spiritual strength and meditate, ponder, always question about what's going on around you. Walk with circumspect, be observant, and more importantly, just pray daily, man. Pray daily, multiple times a day. That the Most High guides you towards truth. He guides you towards knowledge, wisdom, and the tools that we need in this life in order to overcome the obstacles placed before us. Thank you.